Welcome to the Power of Your Voice podcast with your host, Johnny Gorky. You have the power to overcome challenges and fears. Let my voice and the voice of many others show you how to transform these challenges into opportunities. To learn more about future podcasts and read episode show notes, check out my website at www.thepowerofyourvoice.com.
This is episode 46. Today I'm interviewing my friend Daniela Giangiorgi, who is a breast cancer survivor, mother of two, and a show host of Reclaim Yourself Mama. This is a truly beautiful and empowering conversation about the positive and negative effects of people-pleasing and how to shift people-pleasing ways into a win-win situation for all. We discuss raising kids and how to support children with their own people-pleasing ways and how to improve their relationships with their friends. We also dig into how ADD and ADHD can be a blessing and how we can be the best parents possible. Enjoy this conversation. Hey, this is Johnny with the Power of Your Voice podcast. Today I get to interview an amazing lady. Her name is Daniela. And today she's going to talk about how she overcame people-pleasing, cancer, ADHD, and several other topics as well. So Daniela, can you tell us a little bit about your past with people-pleasing and how you struggled with it and what exactly are you doing now what have you done so far to overcome that, and what advice would you give to people who are still currently they're going through people pleasing? Because for a lot of us, we're so worried about what everybody thinks about us and how we have to please everybody.
Hi, Johnny. First of all, thank you so much for having me on here. I absolutely adore you and your generosity and your vigor for life. And it's so exciting to be here with you guys. So thank you. So I'll maybe, if it's okay with you, I'll answer that and then I'll trail backwards into the history, because that will also explain the journey aspect of it in my life, will also explain and answer some of those questions. Does that sound okay?
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So, it is so tempting, right? We all, to a certain degree, care about what other people think of us. And in a certain sense, people-pleasing isn't necessarily a bad thing. I know it gets a very, goopy, uber sweetly sticky persona, and we all really kind of ooh, I don't want to be a people-pleaser. And I will say this. A certain amount of people-pleasing is a good thing. Like, a narcissist has zero practically people-pleasing in him. And the right amount of people-pleasing is actually, it shows that you care about the greater good. It shows that you're cooperative and whatnot. But it's like anything, it's a balance. It's about finding that sweet spot, what I call on the people-pleasing spectrum, so that you can, first and foremost, make sure that you're constantly honoring yourself and your truth, and then B, honor everybody else. And so what tends to happen is we let our insecurities, our fear, that's such an inherent part about being a human being. Our fears can oftentimes take over and change the reasoning and the motivation for what we do. And so a lot of it is just realizing and having the awareness of, where am I coming from right now? Am I coming from a place of fear, or am I coming from a place of authenticity, of honoring myself? So really a lot of it can just be taking inventory, but people pleasing really can start when we're young, in these formative years. And I will tell you this, for me, so this is the history part. For me, I grew up as a pretty normal situation as a little girl. I didn't have any really major traumas in my life. I grew up with a sister and two parents that loved me in a stable home. And what was my version of a trauma, it wasn't an event-driven version as how we usually think of trauma. It was sort of a cultural, repetitive thing within my life. I really struggled in school, Johnny. I had ADHD, and for the life of me, I could not express my intellect in school. And, you get these grades, and then, and I would work hard, but I would just never get those grades. I always got really good citizenship though, Johnny. Like I was always like, everyone was like, oh, I would get most improved, which now I look back, I'm like, oh, that's so honorable. But at the time I'm like, but I just want to be really good at something. And it didn't come easily. But the one thing that came easily to me, Johnny, was my relationship with people. I loved people and they tended to love me. And so, for the areas in your life that you struggle in, you compensate with the areas in your life that you're strong in. And so I really compensated into being this charming, social, people-pleasing little girl. And I gotta tell you, this can happen in your life with people-pleasing, or maybe you become this real driver, doer, protector, whatever it is in your formative years that created more attention, that created validation, that created more love, more security. Anything that creates those things and a pattern of that in your formative years, that can often create how you define the beginning of your life. And so that worked for me, Johnny. Just making sure that everyone was taken care of, complying with the adults, being enamored with the Cinderella story. Now I think gag, but at the time I was so enamored with the idea of a Prince Charming and being sweet and all this stuff. And so I bought into the cultural box of the day and I played it really well. And so it worked as a little girl, Johnny. Like I got the love, I got the attention, I got the validation, but school was always hard. And so school never got any easier, but I mastered this and it worked. And that's why we do these things when we're young, these formative ways, because they work for us. And so now fast forward into my adult life, people pleasing created havoc, absolute havoc. And, whether it was having a lower paycheck because people didn't take me seriously, my people pleasing contributes to low confidence. I ended up marrying a narcissist. That did not last very long. I got a divorce, obviously, because of that. And I also lost a dear friendship. And I never was, maybe even more painful than some of those, I was never the go-to person. I was never the person that people looked up to for, hey, why don't you ask Daniela? She'll know that. I was never the authority. I was never the one that had the trophies or the accolades on my wall. And not that that's a huge deal, but when that is the norm for an extended period of time, it can take a real hit on your confidence.
I would love to know then, how are you able to overcome your ADHD? Because
well, yeah,
a lot of
right.
people struggle with it.
Well, I think a lot of it, I've done a lot of transformational work and some leadership courses, which that's how you and I met, through leadership, which is fantastic. A lot of it is calling it out, calling out the stories that come along with, like, let's say my ADHD. Of course, the ADHD created insecurities about my intellect, which then promoted the people pleasing in me. But realizing that our brains all work differently, that there's actually what they call, I'm reading a book called The Power of Different, which I highly recommend for anyone that has any learning differences, dyslexia, ADHD, or anything, autism, anything. And where we have a deficit, so, an executive functioning for the ADHD person, there is an equal and opposite bell curve. Where there is a deficit, there is an opposite strength. And the opposite strength for an ADHD person is to see patterns, is to see the bigger picture, is to get creative ideas, is to think outside of the box. And that's why they can be such amazing artists and entrepreneurs. I think there's a really high percentage of entrepreneurs having ADHD, really, really high. It's turning it around from making it, instead of being your victim story, having it actually be your superpower. So, and my son has it as well. So I see the way his mind thinks, and it is brilliant. Getting him to get his shoes on in the morning does not feel brilliant, Johnny, I'm going to tell you. Yes. But really there's a brilliance to his ideas and his collaboration and how he thinks how to fix things or come up with solutions. It's always so out of the box. So taking those what feel like deficits and turning them into our asset, and realizing that the old story of I'm not smart or I'm not quick, it's a story, calling it for what it is. I'm not saying certain things may take me longer to learn because, as I say, some people think I'm black and white, and I think not only in a full spectrum of rainbow colors, but then the shades of the rainbow and the contrast of the rainbow. So while things may take longer to learn and understand, by the time you understand it, your understanding can oftentimes be much more prolific about the topic than somebody else. You're not going to have any holes to that. So really seeing the strength and giving yourself that grace. Okay, great. It's going to take me longer. So if someone asks me my opinion about something, or if they want my answer to this, I'm going to be like, you know what? I'm thinking about it, and under several terms and several components, I'm still formulating my answer. I'll get back to you as soon as I'm done. So having the power to, it's powerful to know what you know, but it's equally powerful, Johnny, to know what you don't know and declare it with confidence. You have zero apologies. Nobody has to apologize by how they think. And so really, it can be a really empowering place once you call your story a story and see it for what it is. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree 100%, because that's the thing for a lot of people who struggle with ADHD or ADD, which is what I have, is, we have this story, well, I don't think the way like everybody else does. Everybody's normal and they just get it and it's easy for them, and there's something wrong with us, but there's really nothing wrong with us. We just think differently and there's nothing wrong with it. And just like you said, it's like once we actually get something, we're probably a much further than other people, because we're thinking things on such a complex level, deeper levels and angles, where other people don't see that same way. It just takes longer to get there.
So yes, it is. It's really easy to create self-judgment, and it can be painful. It can absolutely be painful, but it doesn't have to be. You know, I mean, there's so many people that do have these brilliant minds, and some of the greatest geniuses have had it. I can't think of one right now, but there's a plethora of really famous people, artists, creators. I want to say Einstein had ADHD. Oh, don't quote me on it, but research, he had some sort of learning difference. It might have been ADHD or it might have been dyslexia. I can't remember, but really it's a gift. And the trickiest thing, I think also, Johnny, I don't know if you experienced this, is the pain comes when we put ourselves in the box of the norm. But there really is no box. You know, I mean, there is the standard way of like standardized tests of how things function, but you get to empower yourself, know where you are and how you think and how to set yourself up for success, and teach those around you, whether it's a parent advocating for their child in school for more time on an exam, whether it's you in the workplace expressing like, hey, I have this, it's going to take me a little bit longer, but it's going to be really profound once I'm done with it. I need some extra time. Whatever it is, we get to unapologetically ask for what we need to succeed. That's it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when I was in school, I just thought, maybe I just wasn't smart. I don't get things like other people do. And hey, I guess I'm just a C student or average or whatever. But then my therapist, he's like, man, you got ADD. You need some medication. And I was like, no, I don't need any medication. He's like, dude, take this medication. I swear it's going to work. If it doesn't work, you can take my degree off the wall and it's yours. I'm like, okay, trust me, I will take that.
I love him.
Yeah, I'm like, I will take that degree off that wall because I bet you it's not going to work. And he was right. I went from a C student to a straight A student. I was like, well, dang, I actually am smart. I just thought I was stupid, but I just realized my brain wasn't working the same as other people's.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I think you bring up a really good point because I had the same experience, Johnny. And like, thank God there's more understanding and more knowledge today, and kids are getting diagnosed earlier on. But like, I tell my son, I said, school can be a box, and certain schools are going to be better for certain types of brains, and other brains need a different type of learning environment. And just your academic life, it doesn't define your intellect. So we just do the best that we can. We become you get to learn how to do these things and be good at math, or good enough at math. You don't have to be the most stellar student at math if that's not something that comes to you, but you get to find what is your niche, and you get to put your heart and soul in your niche. So it really is about, I think, educating our children so that they don't grow up with the same judgments that we grew up about our intellect. Like, that is definitely one of my biggest goals right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I realize now, having these these challenges in a way is a blessing, because you realize,
Yes.
well, dang, at first we might think there's something wrong with us, and then we realize, no, it's actually a gift. And one of the biggest gifts is because we're going through this and we understand, now we're able to help our kids, because
Yes.
we've been through the same situation. So we know.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think, Tim, I really do think that this is it's so imperative, because, the compensatory things that we do are good until they're not, so my compensatory was the people pleasing, and it was good until I got to my adulthood and I was using it too much, and it was undermining my power, my confidence, and everything that I know, and my intellect. So, realizing what pattern, what compensatory ways did we evolve to make it work for us, and how much of it still works for us? When do I need it? And when can I say, people pleasing, thanks, but not right now. I don't need you right now. Like, I'm good. I can stand in my power, and I can say no to joining the PTA, let's say, because that's not going to be my talent. It's going to add to my workload. It's going to be stressful. And I would rather, I don't know, do this for the school, X, Y, Z, or whatever. But, I think having that awareness is critical. And, I'm going to hop into my journey a little bit more, if that works for you here, Johnny.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So people pleasing can be, and became for me, this culmination of what I would call undetectable chronic stress. For me to say, let's say if my husband or someone asking me, where do you want to go for dinner? And I would say, oh, I don't know. It's up to you. I'm good either way. And it might be at that point that I don't have either I don't have a preference at all, or it's not a preference that's notable. It's not like a big, deep preference. And so I really, at that moment, really maybe truly don't mind going wherever. But when you do that, let's say there is a small element of preference and you don't express that preference, as small as it is, what happens is you gain this level of stress, and it's this undetectable stress. And when you get like a feather, right, you can't really feel the weight of it, but it's there. And when you live your life like this, Johnny, when you constantly let others' preferences go, or not share your opinions for, fear of offending, or not saying no for fear of not being liked, whatever those people-pleasing reasons are, you accumulate this stress over stress over stress of feathers. And it's like the straw that broke the camel's back. These stresses then become a chronic stress, and it can create a cellular breakdown. And Johnny, I used to eat organic. I exercised fairly regularly, and cancer was not in my family. And boom, I got breast cancer in 2014. And, it was sobering. And Johnny, when something like that happens, you ask yourself, how is it possible? Why me? And I did research. And in my heart of hearts, of course, people pleasing, I believe, was a contributor. I'm not going to say it was the only thing. There are a ton of environmental things. But what I say is it made me a candidate for the Cancer Club, the club you never want to join. And so it is a huge, huge passion of mine, Johnny, to have people break out of that people pleasing, to have people honor themselves. And, you know, it surprises people sometimes what people pleasing can even look like. I mean, some people in the workplace that say that they're overachievers, that is a version of people pleasing. They say yes to everything because they want, like, they were maybe the valedictorians of school. So they want to be known as the really like advanced person at work or the go-to person. And so they say yes to everything because of their ego, because they want to be seen as that person in that light. This is a version of people pleasing. And so sometimes it can be surprising as to how people pleasing can show up in our lives. You might even be surprised to learn that people pleasing, a sign of people pleasing, can be someone who anticipates the needs of others or thinks they know what the other person is thinking, almost very, very empathetic. That can be a quality of a people pleaser. So it's really interesting. And at the end of the day, what's important is that we're honoring our truth. We're honoring our worth. We're honoring our opinions. We're honoring our preferences, and we're sharing them and not feeling badly about sharing them. So it's been a huge journey, and one thing has led to the other. And really the cancer was the culmination and was my body's physical and spiritual communication with me to say, hey, something needs to change here. This is not the right path. And you get to figure it out because you got 2 little kids and your time on this earth has been way too short. And so, Johnny, I mean, it is not a gift I would bestow on any single person in this world, but it has become a gift. And then my gift is going to be to share it with the world. So I am pretty passionate about this subject.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a very important thing because, like, you know, as you mentioned in the beginning, there are healthy ways to be a people pleaser, but then there's
Yes.
things that you absolutely shouldn't do, especially like in the workforce. You hear people use the term like a brown noser. It seems like they're always kissing people's butts. They're really not. They just want to please people, but then, you know, that's the way it appears. So what are some things that, you know, for people that might be listening right now, to like, you know, these are the things I do. Are they healthy or unhealthy? Well, what are some things that you think are healthy ways to be a people pleaser? And then things that you probably shouldn't do these because it's not healthy for you.
Yeah, no, I love it. And you bring up something, you know, if we think one way that will help discern this is if you keep people pleasing as neutral and take away the negative connotation. And I'll give you an example of when people pleasing as an adult was actually very good for me. And I did it, lo and behold, automatically without even realizing it. When I was 32 weeks pregnant, I was sent to the hospital to go on bed rest. And I was so scared. I was scared shitless, Johnny. And so there I was. And I ingratiated myself to these nurses, and not with like this, like planned, I'm going to manipulate them into liking me so that they take care of me. It was automatic. It was like a scared kitten purring. That is my analogy of that moment in my life. And so there I was on the hospital bed purring. And I was very nice to these nurses. And I got to tell you, Johnny, they were so nice to me. They were like, treated me like VIP. When I left the hospital, Johnny, I had tears in my eyes because I felt like they were my angels and I was scared to leave them with my baby in the NICU. So in that case, I mean, it came automatically. And like I said, it was not a manipulation. It's just what happened. In that case, it was a really good thing for me to be a people pleaser. And there are moments where, you know, ingratiating yourselves to others is going to be beneficial, not just to you, but to them as well. You can be charming, and that is a positive thing. But what you have to start saying is, like, you have to put on like discerning glasses. You have to be able to discern, am I, you know, before you answer something, why did I answer that? before, hey, do you want to go out to dinner, to whatever? Do I really want to go? I said yes. Why did I say yes? Did I really want to go because I was going to have a good time, or because I thought, oh, my friend's going to be really disappointed if I don't go? It really just starts with the awareness and the pause, that asking yourself, what was my motivation? That's it, Johnny. What was my motivation behind what I did? And then the intention to change. I mean, it's really that simple. It's not like a pill, a fix-it pill, but you can do exercises about this. Like at the end of the day, maybe you can write down. In fact, I would encourage the listeners to do this. At the end of the day, write down the 10 biggest actions that you did that day. And then write down your why. Like if you get real deep and honest, why did you say yes to going out to dinner? Why did you say yes to this? And see if it was fear-based. You wanted to be liked, you were afraid of offending, you didn't want them to get hurt, or see if it was because you were honoring yourself. And in that case, it will feel true, empowering, and you shouldn't have any negative energy around whatever it was that you did, if it honors your truth.
That's extremely good, because if you're going to do something to please somebody, it's okay as long as it's something that you want to do. The thing is, sometimes if we're doing something that we don't want to do to please somebody, what happens, or at least in my experience, is I start to resent people, and it's not really fair to them, because it's not their fault, but it's our fault. And then we don't like them, and then it's like, hey, what's going on? Are you upset with me? No, I'm not upset with you. I just don't want to tell you how I really feel. And then passive aggressive, and then it's just like a big hot mess. But yeah, like I was just thinking of something while you're talking about this. My dad died when I was 15 years old. When he died, I started getting Social Security. So yeah, I get a couple $100. My mom would give me the money. I'd go to the store. I'd buy these nice clothes. And I mean, I grew up dirt poor. So I mean, I didn't dress very nice. But when I got this money, I had really nice clothes. And then I had a couple of friends of mine like, hey, can I borrow your clothes? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then it got to the point where I'm like, I don't really want to let them borrow my clothes because I know they don't take care of them, and then they ruin them. But I was like, yeah, sure, you can borrow my clothes. And then I'd start getting upset with them because they would ruin them. And then I was so worried about, I want them to be my friend. I want them to like me. But then I got to the point where I couldn't stand these people, but I just couldn't say no.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fair to them. And it definitely wasn't right for me. I couldn't stand up for myself. And that's why, if you want to do something like join a PTA meeting because you seriously want to join.
Exactly.
But if you're only going to join because you don't want to say no because you're afraid to upset somebody, but then later on, you're going to like, I really didn't want to join anyways, but, I didn't want to upset so-and-so's mother or whatever. Well, then that's not the reason to join. Do things because you generally want to do it.
Yes, absolutely. And it's what I call gracious boundaries. In fact, I'm working on a website called Gracious Boundaries right now that I'll be launching. And you bring up a really good point, Johnny. When you people please someone, as the people pleaser's mind, they think they're being nice, but we're actually, and not like, I'm not saying this is malicious, but we're actually manipulating them, and we're in a sense taking their power away. We're saying, oh my God, they're going to be sad or offended or upset. Like, well, let them own that, or maybe they won't be. Maybe they're not so like, maybe we're not that important in their life that they're going to be sad. Like, it's a little bit like, no, like, and if they are going to be, that's their journey. They get to struggle with that sadness. They get to overcome it. They get to see what's beneath the sadness. And then if you're standing in your power and you're being true and you're honest, you can say, hey, I'm noticing this is making you sad. What's coming up for you? Tell me. I'd love to collaborate. Oh no, well, it has nothing to do with you. It just really has to do with me, that this doesn't feel right for me in my life because of this, but how can I support you? I don't know, and getting help from somebody else or whatever, so when you stand in your power and you are true to yourself, you actually give that same gift to somebody else.
This is easier for us because we're adults, we're more mature and stuff like that. But, I know you have 2 boys. I also have 2 sons as well. And a big challenge for me is like, how do you really give good advice to young kids? Because all of us have done this as a kid. We're so worried
Yeah.
that our friends, we're like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, even teenagers. And oh my gosh, if
Yeah.
I don't give money to my friend, or I don't let them borrow my clothes, or I don't share my food with them at lunch, or
Right.
whatever, then my friends are going to hate me and they're not going to like me anymore.
Yeah.
How do you teach a child
You
that,
know,
it's
yeah.
okay, you don't have to do something? Because I mean, I use this as a quick example. My son, we're at the grocery store. He's like, Daddy, I got to buy these spicy chips for my son. I mean, for my friend at school. I was like, why? Because if I don't, he's not going to be my friend anymore. I'm like, seriously? No. If he really likes you,
Yeah.
he'll be your friend regardless if you get him chips. But how
Yeah.
do you teach these young kids this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, and I'm working on it myself. I'm still figuring it out for sure, to be honest. If I knew for sure 100% like the methodology, I'd probably be a millionaire here, Johnny. But it's I had this situation too where with my son where I could see him deferring to the preference of his friend, and I said, Paul, I said, what, well, I asked him, I think one, being inquisitive, and two, also holding space and understanding for that time in everyone's life where assimilation is survival, and getting and acknowledging that. I mean, when you're young, the last thing you want to do is be different. And acknowledge that, because I mean, if we don't acknowledge that, they're going to go, Mom, you don't understand. So I think start with acknowledging, like, I get it. It does feel scary to be maybe different, or take a stand with your friends. But inquiring, so okay, so if you don't bring chips, this kid's gonna not be your friend. Is that true? Really? Okay, it is. And if he really feels adamant, like it's true, say, so what if you had only friends in your life that were conditional, and maybe not use those words, but say, okay, so what if your other friend only wanted to do this, and your other friend wanted to do this, and your other friend wanted you to do this, and only would like you if you did this? Like, if you had only those kinds of friends, what would that be like? Would that be exhausting to live that way? And and then have it be the flip side. Like, do you want your friends to think that you'll only be their friend if they give you chips? And to say, well, what, and really kind of just set the table for them, and have them ask questions to themselves so that they can come up with their own answers. So evoke and guide those questions to them, I would say. And I don't think it's anything that, like, overnight they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to buy him chips anymore. Like, I think that's the journey of children. I think that is the journey of children, is going from assimilating into finding themselves and who they are and being able to take a stand. And I just think recognizing where they are and supporting them, and being inquisitive, really being inquisitive, and talking about how honoring themselves is going to be the best way that they can be their buddy's friend, really.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah, because just making them think about it is key.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure if they think about it, like, you know what? Yeah, that does sound kind of silly now that you say it that way. And
Yeah.
instead of them making you think that, you tell them this is what you need to do, make them
Yes.
down. And I mean, they're smart. They can figure things out, and they don't need us to tell us exactly what to do. They
Exactly.
know that we care, and hey, we're making them think. It's actually
Exactly.
fun because it's kind of like an exercise for them, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the more we don't come from a do this, do that, the more we come from an inquisitive place, the more they will come up with a solution. So if we evoke the solutions within themselves, then they're going to really take ownership, right? I mean, it's like all human beings. That's the same with all human beings. But I mean, I can't, how many times have kids are like, oh God, the adult doesn't understand, they're just telling me what to do. They don't remember what it's like to be a kid. So yeah, I mean, we all had that experience, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I go with my child, and it's working. And I would still classify him as a people pleaser. And the other thing, what, in terms of discouraging people pleasing as a child, and this is really quite the norm in parent education these days, is to reward the effort, not the outcome. So and then also, if your child comes and does something that you can tell is dripping of people pleasing, like my youngest son did this. What did he do the other day? He did something like, "Oh, mommy, I love you, here's $1," or something like that. Like, be like, "Oh," like don't overly be like, "Oh, that's so sweet, thank you, honey, you're so nice." That's just gonna promote him doing that kind of thing. Be like, just like, "Oh, I've got money," or "Thanks," or "Why are you giving me that?" Or not really, if they do something that's drippingly sweet like that to buy your attention, kind of glazing over. But then is the second that you can reward them and give them attention for an effort that they're doing, reward that. Oh, and if they stand up for themselves, say, "Good for you. Good for you." Like my son did that the other day. He was with a friend and he said, "Hey, if you continue doing this," they were playing Minecraft or something, "then I'm going to leave the world." And I was like, "Good for you, Nicholas. Good for you." So yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, these are challenges that kids are always going to have, but it's
Yes.
that they learn that, hey, you know what? It's okay if not everybody's going to be happy with you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if the world's all happy about you if you're not going to be happy with yourself.
Ooh, boom, Johnny. Boom.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, how many of us? I mean, we're so worried about what everybody thinks and how much they like us, but then we don't like ourselves, and it's so draining, and it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
that way. We
Wow.
we give so much of ourselves. Well, we need to refill our own cup too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why when you go on an airplane, they say, put the mask on your face first before you help other people,
I know.
because you can't help anybody if you're not alive.
It's the best cliche ever.
Got to take care of yourself. Now, do you ever, I mean, I'm sure you do, but do you ever have those moments where you fall back into people pleasing and now, you fall back in that rabbit hole, but you're like, you know what? No, I know where I'm going with this.
Oh yeah, sure. It's I feel like these things that formed you when you were younger, they shaped you. But and they never entirely leave you. I'm sure I love pleasing people. I like people. I want them to be happy with me. But just being really conscious of it and just almost like pulling back as if I was watching the movie of my life, and just asking myself those questions and just being really, really aware. And I think the times where I struggle most with people pleasing is in the setting of a new group of people, and I'll see myself and be like, "Oh, there it is." It's almost like creating. What's kind of fun, Johnny? Creating a persona. Like, so let's say my people pleasing would be maybe Penny the people pleaser. Oh, I saw Penny the people pleaser come out in this Toastmasters meeting that I just joined. Yeah, I don't need her. Thanks, Penny. I got this. And so not like beating yourself up about it, going, "Oh man, there I did it again." Like, okay, great. She came in because you were feeling vulnerable. So she came in to try to support you, and say, "Thanks, Penny, but I've got more tools in the box now. I don't have to just rely on you. I'm good. I can actually honor myself, stand in my power, meet these new people, tell them what I truly think about their speech or whatever the situation is, and give them honest, constructive feedback that they can really use and grow in their lives." So it's just being conscious about it and being dedicated and committed, gracious with yourself and non-judgmental. But it happens sometimes. It does.
Yeah, I think also too, for some of us, we're people pleasers, and then we might not feel that people respect us and all that kind of stuff. And just thinking about it, it's like, hey, they actually go hand in hand. If you stop people pleasing people all the time, you actually gain respect. Because like I was thinking about this, a lot of times, you're young, you have a job, and it's like, hey, can you work a couple extra hours this week? And you're like, sure. Hey, can you work this weekend? Yeah, sure. Hey, so-and-so called in sick. Can you work for them? Yeah, sure. And every single time you're doing that, because you don't want to upset your boss, you're pleasing your boss. But then it's like
Yes.
you start building that history with them. It's like, well, every
Yeah.
single time anyone calls in sick, Johnny, call him.
Yes.
He'll always do it. He'll never say no.
Yep.
But if you
Yep.
get to the point where it's like, you know what, I would love to, but I told my family I'm going to spend time with them this weekend. So,
Yep.
I'm going to say no. They're
Yep.
actually going to respect it. They're like, wow, this person
Totally.
said no. Okay, you know what? I respect
Absolutely.
that. By breaking the cycle of always having to please people, you're also going to gain a lot of different things like respect, which is a very important thing to get.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always say that we are constantly training people how to treat us. Absolutely. So if we're standing in our power and we're demanding respect with grace, whatever, then you're going to be able to get more respect from your boss, and you're going to have greater confidence, and you're going to be able to go in and ask for that raise and be very reasonable and very truthful about the real why of why you deserve that, but if we're people pleasing, we train people to take advantage of that because we're the constant yes. And how exhausting is that? That's why, and I have, I do want to tell your viewers that I have a people pleasing quiz that will let you know where you are on the people pleasing spectrum.
Okay.
And
that sounds good.
Yeah. And I know you're going to possibly put that on the website, but why don't I can give it to you here as well, Johnny.
Yeah.
But in this people-pleasing quiz, you'll learn that, sometimes indicators of people-pleasing may simply be, and I mentioned earlier, being able to forecast what people's emotions and where they're feeling, being overworked, having not enough time. These aren't necessarily things that one would think of as people-pleasing traits, but they can be. So if you do want to access the people-pleasing quiz, you can go to reclaimyourselfmama.com. Again, that's reclaimyourselfmama.com/quiz registration, all one word.
Okay, great. Now, Daniela, if you could go back to when you were, I don't know, maybe 15, 16 years old, a teenager, what would you have told yourself about feeling that you need to please everybody?
Oh, gosh, you know what? That's a darn good question, Johnny. I would have told her, it's okay. Like, I would have told her, you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. I would have told her that she is powerful enough and smart enough, and that her honoring herself was the most important thing in the world. And that when she gets courageous and can do that, she will give other people the courage to do the same. That's what I would tell her.
Nice. Is there one last thing you like people take away from this interview? Something.
Yeah, I would say formative years created who you are, and they are jewels and they are gifts, and they also come with hardships, but that is not your story because you are still driving, and you can create and be whatever it is that you want to be. You can forgive yourself for the pains of the past, and you can be conscious and turn around. And the biggest and most important thing of all is honor yourself, honor your truth. And when you do, you will set others free to do the same.
Yes. Love it. Thank you so much, Daniela. I really, really appreciate you being on the Power of Your Voice podcast. It's been amazing.
Incredible. Thank you, Johnny.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Johnny here. Thank you for listening to the Power of Your Voice podcast. I would absolutely love to get your feedback on this episode and how it impacted you. Reach out to me on Instagram by sending a direct message to username Voice Podcast. If someone in your life could benefit from this episode, share it with them, and check out thepowerofyourvoice.com to read blogs on each podcast episode and learn more about what was discussed. And please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This lets me know you find this show valuable, and thank you for listening.